peace deal at the White House. I was there on the second lawn for the announcement. You know, CNN didn't even cover it. They didn't even cover it. What in the hell was going on that was more important? Did Martians land and I missed it? Like okay, on the order of like news stories, historic Middle East peace deal that hasn't happened in decades, in the ordinary world would mean, yeah, maybe the 24-hour news channel should cover it. And I said, look, if a peace deal falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, it doesn't make any sense. They think they win that. Now, I don't know if they win that or not. But that's the reason Joe Biden is hiding in his basement. Because they don't want him to say anything. Because they don't want to change the topic. They want it all to be, goodness gracious, did you see that last tweet from Donald Trump? We have got to destroy our nation now as a result. But I'm sorry, your point B doesn't follow from A. So it's up to us to focus on issues that matter. Now look, Rich is an extraordinary guy. He's a Marine. He's a doctor. Which means, by the way, he can kill you and then bring you back to life. He's a gladiator. You know, Rich mentioned we did a fundraiser for 25 House candidates across the country. And a few weeks ago, it was a great gathering. It was an inspirational gathering. You look at some of the men and women that are stepping up to serve. You know, it's easy to be demoralized until you see some of these heroes that want to fight for our country. But I will say my favorite moment of the whole weekend, so one of the candidates, Rich mentioned him, a guy named Big Dan Rodheimer. He's running in Nevada. Now, Big Dan is 6'7" and 290 pounds. And he was a professional wrestler. Like, that was a job. He was, you know, I mean, and apparently a pretty good professional wrestler. If anything, his personality is bigger than his body. Now, some of you guys may have noticed, Rich is jacked.
Record it. Somebody record it.
Like, let's be clear, this man's biceps are bigger than my thighs. And so we're sitting there, and I have to admit, look, part of the way you do politics and survive is you gotta have some fun in it. If you're not laughing, it'll tear you apart. So I'm sitting there with the two of them and said, look, clearly the most important contest we need to have is Rich and Big Dan in arm wrestling. And so he was up to it. The two of them went at it. Now there are two factors going on. Number one, well, Big Dan is a wrestler. By the way, wrestling is not entirely real. There are a couple of people who are, I apologize if I have shattered anyone's dreams. But Big Dan, the sort of play-by-play commentary is, he's like, oh, he's losing, he's coming back! It was... we couldn't breathe. We were laughing so hard. Our ribs are in agony. It was... The other problem was it was 12:30 at night. And we were in the patio of a hotel, and they had 9 noise complaints. So they come out and they're threatening to arrest us. And my political guy's like, take us to jail. We're going to jail. Okay, I get the sentiment. Everyone count to 10. These are candidates running for Congress. I don't want the end of this weekend to be that they're all booked into the local jail. So we diffused the situation and ended it. But I will tell you, Rich held his own. I think it was a draw, and then one or the other faked like kicking each other in the head or something. But it was a strong moment. Many nights as possible. There's a reason I got on a plane and flew here. And didn't get to kiss my girls goodnight last night. And the reason is the stakes of what we're fighting for are really high. If you look at Washington, there are a lot of things that need to happen. We need to re-elect the president. We need to keep the Senate in Republican hands. Both of those I'm working very hard to do. But I don't know that there's anything more important than taking the gavel out of Nancy Pelosi's hands. You look at the last 4 years. First half of the Trump presidency, first 2 years, we had a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and we got an enormous amount accomplished. We passed the biggest tax cut in a generation. We repealed job-killing regulations, and you look at the results. Look at the results that we saw right here in Georgia. We saw the lowest unemployment in 50 years, 5-0. We saw the lowest African-American unemployment ever recorded. Lowest Hispanic unemployment ever recorded. Lowest Asian American unemployment ever recorded. Lowest unemployment for women in 70 years. Lowest unemployment for young people in 70 years. Incredible results. We're in the middle of the biggest rebuild of our military since Ronald Reagan. That record of results is amazing, what got accomplished. And yet, every bit of that ground to a halt in January of 2019. When the Democrats took the House, all legislation stopped. Zero. There was one objective for House Democrats, and that was to impeach Donald J. Trump. It's their only priority. So as I look at it, getting Pelosi and AOC and Tweedledum and Tweedledummer, getting them out of power is critical. And this race here matters. Rich's opponent lost the last election by 400 votes. 400. Not 4,000, not 1,000, 400 votes. This race is a battleground. If Rich loses, Nancy Pelosi will stay Speaker. You know, talk about races that matter. Races matter on the margin. They matter when it's the difference between a win and a loss. When it's a difference between victory or defeat. When it's a difference between control or what happens if we lose. Let me tell you, if we wake up in January of next year and we have a Biden, Pelosi, Schumer government, they'll do more damage in 2 years than Obama did in 8. Their party has let the crazies go. That's who they're being driven by. And we can't let that happen. And so I'm really grateful that y'all are here, because this is a room of patriots. This is a room of Americans who are saying, we're not going to let our country be pulled over the cliff. We're not going to let America be pulled into darkness. And Phil Graham used to say something that I love. He'd be out on the campaign trail and he'd say, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is we have all the money we need to win this race. The bad news is most of it's still in your pockets. So let me just say, y'all have been very, very generous supporting Rich. But I want to ask you to dig down deep. Consider if you can take the contribution you've given and double it. If you gave 500, give 1,000. If you gave 1,000, give 2,000. If you gave 2,800, give 5,600 from you and your spouse. This is a race where people say, well, why does money matter? Well, the press isn't going to cover it fairly. The press wants him to lose. Big tech isn't going to treat this race fairly. The only way we're going to win this race, and by the way, the only way we're going to win this race, the only way we're going to win the Senate seats in Georgia, the only way we're going to get President Trump reelected, is if all of us take the lead in moving the hearts and minds and telling the truth. Through all the lies, all the smoke, all the misdirection, we need to be connecting directly with young people, with Hispanics, with African Americans, with suburban moms. Suburban moms who are suddenly voting Democratic, and you want to know why Georgia is now purple? It's suburban moms who've moved left. Well, you know what? All of us love our mom. That's our collective failure for not making the case that the policies of the last 4 years have benefited suburban moms and benefited families enormously. For not making the case that the crazy leftist policies that are resulting in angry, violent mobs destroying businesses and firebombing police cars. This is a firefight. Rich is in a foxhole with him coming, and he's looking down at his ammo. And when you write another check, you're letting him know that he's got a few more rounds in the chamber. It really is that direct, that one more check means another ad on TV, it means another ad on the radio, it means another mailer at the door, it means another person knocking on the doors, it means another social media thing to be suppressed. Y'all are making a huge difference. And so the reason I'm here this morning is because you guys are fighting for my family. You're fighting for my daughters and what kind of country they're going to inherit. And so I'm really proud to be in that foxhole with you. Because this country we're fighting for, America's worth it. Thank you. Let's do a couple of questions. I don't know if we have time. I may be screwing up your... And Jody, come up too.
You got to turn the mic off.
Anyone got questions?
Senator? I know a little bit about dealing with the president. My daughter worked in administration for the first year. But you are the poster child for a principled conservative, where Donald Trump is a conservative by pragmatism, that conservatism works. And I know you have developed a friendship with him. Can you talk a little bit about how those contrast and how you've learned to work together?
Well, look, Trump is a unique soul.
My daughter would say that.
When you look back over the last 4 years, I think it is astonishing how much we've gotten accomplished. And I've been blessed. I work very, very closely with the President. I speak with him probably once a week, sometimes twice a week. I spend a lot of time with him directly. There have been a ton of policy battles we've had in this administration, and I am very active and engaged. And I'll say, I think actually Trump's best characteristic is a characteristic shared by both of these gentlemen, which is that he's got backbone. That he'll make decisions. Frankly, Trump has been willing to make decisions, many of which I've been urging, but willing to make decisions that most Republicans wouldn't. That's important. Courage is the indispensable attribute. In the grand battle of ideas, in the grand argument between free enterprise and socialism, Trump doesn't necessarily spend his time trying to win the argument. So that means it falls to the rest of us to do it. If we're going to explain to young people, if we're going to explain to the next generation why freedom matters, it's not sufficient to sit back and complain, well, I wish he did a better job of it, it's a shame, I guess we'll just give up the country. We have a responsibility to step in. So I work with him very closely. I'll continue to work with him very closely. And I think if you contrast it with Joe Biden, listen, let's take the other side. I know Joe Biden pretty well. Joe swore me into the Senate when I was first elected. Didn't swear at me, swore me in. Although 2 exchanges actually from my swearing in will give you a sense of Joe Biden. Number one, my mom was born in Wilmington, Delaware, and so she was there. My mom was, and you know, I introduced my mom to Joe, and my mom said, "Oh, I've got probably 100 cousins in Delaware," and Joe said, "They probably all voted for me." And actually, my mom sort of rolled her eyes and like, "Yeah, they probably did." But secondly, our youngest daughter, Catherine, she was 2 at the time. Caroline was 4, Catherine was 2. And Joe leaned over to pick Catherine up. And Catherine screamed. And Joe said, "It's okay, it's okay. It's a Democrat, but it's okay." And that actually made, you know how Time Magazine does the quotes of the week? That made next week's quote of the week was Catherine Cruz to Joe Biden, which I intend to read that at her wedding, hopefully a long time. Look, Joe is a very affable guy. It's hard to dislike Joe. And I actually think a lot of folks on the right have convinced themselves that he's lost all mental facility. I don't actually think that's right. And I think it's dangerous that the conservative echo chamber has convinced ourselves of that. It's clear Joe has lost a step. But to be honest, Joe said stupid things in his 20s. I mean, this is not new. Joe on gun control 2 decades ago said on guns, if anyone attacks your house, just go outside with a double-barreled shotgun and fire both barrels in the air. Which, by the way, is excellent advice. If it so happens you're being attacked by a flock of geese. The reason, though, it's dangerous that people say, all right, Joe is 5 bottles short of a 6-pack, is I worry when we get to the debates, the bar for success will be defined so low that if he can string together 3 coherent sentences, they're going to be like, my goodness, what a dominating performance. Which they would say if he literally fell off the stage. They're going to say that anyway. But I don't think we should define the bar down that low. I mean, look, if you look at the debates earlier this year in the Democratic Party, Joe did fine. I mean, it was a pretty talented field he was running against. It was a bunch of knife fighters. You don't believe that? Go back and watch Elizabeth Warren filleting Michael Bloomberg. And I mean, it was surgical. On the stage, she cut him open and removed his liver and set it on the podium. I mean, it was... and Bloomberg was sitting there like, I don't think anyone had dared say anything negative to him in 50 years. He didn't know what to say. What do you mean you're criticizing me? All of which is to say, Joe is a much more formidable candidate in November than we think. But what makes Joe very dangerous is he's given the party over to the crazies. The people driving the Democratic Party right now are Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and AOC. And Joe's not going to stand up and fight. Joe himself, he's not a crazy lefty. He's just willing to let the crazy lefties drive the country into oblivion. And so we've got a president with the backbone to fight, but it also underscores the need for the rest of us to explain why the election matters and why it matters to our families.
To the U.S. that gave a lot of Indians and their parents the opportunity to come here and be successful. Majority are entrepreneurs, doctors, and IT guys. How is the Indian culture supporting you, and how do you feel about what's going back in India with Kashmir and China current situation?
So I think India, I'm encouraged. I think America and India's relationship has gotten much, much stronger in the last several years. I think there are a couple of things that are playing out. Some of us we were visiting before. I was in India in October, and shortly before that, I had the opportunity to welcome Prime Minister Modi to Texas, to Houston, for a big event. Howdy Modi, 50,000 people came out to the event. I mean, it was an incredible, incredible event. And it is important. Look, India is the world's largest democracy. And historically, there have been meaningful tensions between India and America. Throughout the Cold War, at times there were very real tensions. Modi wants to be friends with America. Modi's made the decision, the right decision, I believe, that India and America should be friends and allies. I emphatically agree with that. And I think a big part of it, and this is part of your question, is a counterbalance to China. So actually the trip that I was in India, I was traveling to Asia, and I went to Pearl Harbor, Japan, Taiwan, India, Hong Kong. And the reason for that particular sweep, it was a Friends and Allies tour focused on stopping Chinese aggression. Stopping the threat. I believe communist China is the single greatest geopolitical threat facing America in the next 100 years. And one of the keys to standing up to communist China is India getting more assertive, more stronger, and more capable to press back. They're obviously direct neighbors. And you're absolutely right that America and India have deep ties. We have a wonderful Indian-American community. In Texas alone, we've got 500,000 Indian Americans in Texas. And we were visiting before. I actually I view the Indian-American community as actually quite similar to the Cuban-American community, where in both instances it's communities of immigrants who came filled with hopes and dreams, who were entrepreneurial, who wanted to start businesses. You know, you look at, for example, the Indian American community and owning hotels and motels, and you get all across the country incredible entrepreneurs where the Indian American community really stepped in, owning and running hotels all over the country.
78%.
It's a staggering. And that, and by the way, small business, if you care about jobs, small business is the key to jobs.
Amen.
So I think we ought to keep leaning in for closer relationships with India, a closer alliance. You mentioned Kashmir. Look, India and Pakistan don't like each other. I don't have a solution to that. They didn't like each other before I was here. They're probably not going to like each other after I'm here. So when I meet with either India or Pakistan, I tell both of them, please don't kill the other. Like it's bad for the world if you guys start shooting at each other. So I don't have a magic solution to it. Pakistan is a tough country. We have to deal with them in part because a lot of the enemies of America find their way to Pakistan. And they have nuclear weapons, which means not having their government fall into the hands of people who want to murder us is really, really, really in our interest. But there's no doubt India has far greater cultural similarities and natural synergies with America. And so I am hopeful that we'll continue building ties of commerce and security and diplomacy and economic ties that strengthen India and the continent, and I hope at the same time counterbalance China. And I don't know if either of you guys want to.
So I too had that same tour of the Eastern Rim in India, but I was in a ship with 2,000 other Marines. I don't think it was the same accommodations. I'm just guessing. But it's very interesting. I've had obviously great outpouring of love from the Indian community here, by the way. 100,000 just in our district alone. It's phenomenal. The impact, a community that pays 6 times their value in taxes. So you understand the difference making when it comes to legislation that cuts taxes, that allow you to produce the jobs, allows you to control your own destiny, allows you to help America step up to the next level as ideal citizens, people who follow laws, who are raising amazing children, who are highly educated, highly driven to succeed. I can say the same thing about the Far Eastern Rim. We have tons of people from China and Korea and Thailand and everywhere. You know, just amazing support from the very beginning of this campaign. I think the natural drift is going to be, you've seen in the past, I think Bill Clinton was a very popular president amongst the Indian community. I've noticed a dramatic shift just this election towards conservative value, natural home of immigrants from all over the world. That's why I say the future of the Republican Party is that big tent, understanding that it doesn't matter what country you come from. This is the American dream that we represent as conservatives, to provide you the opportunity to control your own destiny. The ultimate minority is the individual with God-given rights that we grant back to the government in small portions to help us along our way. But I think that's what makes the senator such a great ally of the Indian community, and I think our future, where we encourage good behavior from countries and punish bad behavior. I think what the president's been doing is excellent in that regard, building these alliances with Prime Minister Modi, with UAE, Bahrain, Bosnia, all these amazing things. I mean, truly, in my opinion, if you want to talk about a Nobel Peace Prize, if you want to legitimize it, make up for what you did the last presidency by giving it to someone who actually is doing something right.
I just want to add just one comment, one of your comments. You said it's tough to be an American. I really, agree with that, because you and we follow the same thing. The moment you say you're American, people think, oh, there's so much of hatred against you. They're saying, oh, you're a fanatic and this and that. I mean, similar to that, as a Hindu American, we also face similar things. Actually, say, oh, you're a Hindu, you're a religious person. They'll say, oh, you're a fanatic and this and that. So everybody's facing the same thing. Unfortunately, I think this whole countries are messed up, because of these Democrats. Their ideologies, and they want to bring their issues. Ilhan Omar or Rashid, all these people have their issues, and they want to bring the same issues here and mess up this country. So if we want you to be there all the time, so you will have our support.
Well, and thank you. And I will say that actually really illustrates the beauty and the brilliance of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. When you look at religious liberty, when you look at free speech, religious liberty means every one of us can make the choice according to our own faith, our own conscience, how to seek out and worship God, who God is, And it is not government that makes that decision for us, and it's that diversity of views. In most countries on earth, you can't do that. The people who founded America were fleeing religious oppression and coming to a place where you could be free. And the journey of America has been a journey towards freedom, from including our horrific history with slavery, the original sin of our country, but we fought a civil war to end slavery, and that has been a journey towards freedom as well. And look, one of the problems with the left right now is they are totalitarian. They demand you must believe what we believe, you must say what we say, there is no other view, we will shut you down, we will cancel you, we will censor you if you disagree. That's a sign of weakness. That's a sign that they're scared. And my advice, by the way, that I give to conservatives, I give to libertarians, I give to young people all the time, is don't respond with anger. You know, the other side is so angry, they're so shrill. How many radical leftists does it take to screw in a light bulb? That's not funny! Just lighten up. Relax. You know, there are decaffeinated brands on the market. They're just as tasty. So don't respond for us in kind, but be happy warriors. We have a reason to be joyful because the ideas we're fighting for work. And so that diversity of faith, that diversity of views, that diversity of speech, all of that is who we are as America. All right, yes, ma'am.
In light of the same religious freedom that we've been discussing, which we believe in, which we are going to lose if we don't win, we cannot get our pastors to discuss religious freedom. Have you, any of you, Jody, you too, any of you got suggestions of how to address pastors to get them to realize what's at stake here for our religious freedom? Thank you.
Thank you, great question. Most of y'all know I was a pastor almost 30 years before going to Congress, and this has been one of the biggest challenges in my life prior to going to Congress and since being there. We have, listen, our nation was founded in such a way that George Washington said in his farewell address that the indispensable supports upon which this nation rests are religion and morality. Religion are indispensable. In fact, he went on and said, in essence, you cannot claim to be a patriot if you don't understand the role of religion and morality in our society. The truth is, it is impossible to have limited government, which our Constitution guarantees us, if we don't have people who are capable of self-governing their own lives. And that comes from the inside. It comes from an understanding of right and wrong. It comes from religion and morality that impacts a person's life and enables them to self-govern themselves in such a way that we don't need oppressive government intruding every decision in our life. They're indispensable to limited government. And as it relates to pastors, I'll tell you, I'll just say two quick things and I'll let this go. Number one, we're 46 days away. We can't wait on pastors at this point. We have got to step up to the plate and run the race that many of them are unwilling to run at this point. The second thing, though, that I'm engaged in right now with several pastors is the understanding that God, and I know not everyone in here is a Christian, but from a Judeo-Christian biblical worldview, God created three institutions: family, church, and government. These are not man-made things. They are God-created things. And most people don't have a difficulty understanding God-created family. Most don't struggle with understanding God-created church and faith community. But many really struggle with the concept that God created government. But listen, all three of them are different. Without family, where there's relationships and forgiveness and grace and teamwork and love, then a person without that, coming from a dysfunctional family, has great difficulty understanding those things and they go astray. Without a faith community that is building this network likewise of faith in God and working together and providing a moral compass for this faith community and the community in which that church or whatever is located, that church is spreading the understanding of community morality and so forth. But then government is for those where God instituted this thing so that all of us would live in a civil society. And pastors need to understand this, that government is a God-instituted thing. This is not a man-made deal. And for us to be salt and light, listen, in America we have two winds behind this sail. We have the call, just as believers of faith communities, to be salt and light in our world. But in America, we live in a system in which this whole thing does not work without involvement of the people. That's what America is based on. We the people. And we have the invitation. Beyond an invitation, we have a system that does not work unless we step up to the plate and get involved. So listen, this is a big, complicated deal as to how to get pastors engaged in this thing. I will tell you this, there are more pastors beginning to grasp it now than there have been in the last 20 years that I've been engaged personally in this battle. There are, and Senator Cruz sees it too, there are frequent groups of pastors coming to Washington, D.C. right now. And I think I get to speak at every one of them that come in. Literally thousands of pastors every year coming to Washington, D.C. And they are beginning to engage it. Now there are tens of thousands more that need to. But there is a movement of understanding that's taking place, and we just got to keep educating. But in the meantime, y'all, we can't wait on pastors. We got to move.
I'd like to make one comment. This is the only country where you can come in and become an American.
Absolutely.
Yep.
You can't go to any other country and become.
That's right.
One point I want to add is that what we are realizing is, I've been in this country for 13 years. The people who have seen the world are coming to America, and they appreciate this country more than people who are born here. They're not appreciating this country because they haven't seen the other side.
So we're about ready to finish up. I'm sorry, we're on a time schedule. We actually have another event, which is great. But God bless you guys for being here. Thank you so much for the diverse input, and thanks to our special guests.